Hi, all of you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diver Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have just piqued my interest over the previous week. The podcast is sponsored by the scuba diving giant Scubapro, who have a free Octo offer running right now at participating dealers. I'll talk more about the offer and Scubapro later on in this podcast. This week on the podcast, a statement from the company behind Indo Siren, the liveaboard after the fire last week, plans for a new deep diving pool in the US, a pair of manatees are to be released from a theme park, and UK divers have discovered the deepest evidence for coral bleaching at 90 meters underwater. So last week, as I was recording the podcast, there was some breaking news that a liveaboard, the Indo Siren, was ablaze, and there was very little information about it, but since then, of course, we've had a press statement. The Indo Siren has been destroyed completely by a fire during a cruise around Raja and Pat. Thankfully, all of the guests and the crew were safely evacuated. The blaze broke out on the morning of the 30th of November, and photographs and video from the scene show the vessel being gutted by the fire. A statement from Master Liveaboards said, "During our current cruise in Raja and Pat on the morning of the 30th of November, a fire broke out on Indo Siren. At the current time, we are still assessing the events around the incident and will be working with authorities, so cannot currently comment further. All guests and staff departed the boat without further incident. They are now with our ground crew who have organised accommodations while we assist with all their other needs going forwards. We are currently evaluating the issues created by the fire on upcoming trips. Guests who are likely to be affected by enforced cancellation or changes will be contacted in due when plans are finalised. We are incredibly grateful that this incident was not more serious and that everyone who was on board, both crew and guests, are safe and well." So obviously, if you have a dive trip booked on Indo Siren, that's now been cancelled, and I presume that Master Liveaboards have been in contact, and time will tell what will happen going forwards. Luckily, nobody was hurt. I think everybody was out on a dive, or at least all of the guests were out on a dive when the fire broke out. It was the first dive of the day, so everyone was away from it. Unfortunately, all of their belongings, apart from their diving equipment that they were wearing, was destroyed. But now they have to go through the repatriation procedures to talk to like local embassies and stuff and get temporary passports or whatever's involved. Such a shame, because it was such a beautiful liveaboard. It was a wooden hull liveaboard, which of course went up sort of very easily, and it was sails as well. They had the big blue sails. So awful news. But yeah, luckily nobody was injured. News coming out of the US that adaptive scuba diving organisation Diveheart has announced it's building the world's deepest warm water therapy pool. This is planned to be a zero net project, and it's targeting a spot in the northern suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. After securing the second of two patents on the deep pool design earlier this year, the Diveheart management team decided to reveal the pool's design and kick off a major fundraising campaign in 2024. According to the Diveheart executive director, "There are many great types of therapy, but in scuba diving we have the franchise on zero gravity. It's thrilling to help get someone out of their wheelchair and standing up underwater for the first time since their injury, or maybe for the first time in their lives." Yeah, I did a little bit of work with some disabled divers, and it is nice to see how some of them you don't have to I can't remember the phrase, but you don't have to be like overly gentle with some of them. Granted, this chap was I think he was a former para. He was in the parachute regiment, and we were like, oh, okay, so as far as logistics of getting you in the water, he's like, oh, just take a running start and just tip me in. We're like, okay, we're not going to do that. but we're hopefully going to do this. Dive Heart's deep pool will provide a way to scale up and help many more people enjoy the benefits of underwater zero gravity in a confined and safe, warm water environment. The pool will be a worldwide destination for research, rehabilitation, education, training, and will provide vocational opportunities as well. We've seen plenty of these projects. Some that haven't come to fruition, some that have. We've got a few deep water pools. We've started with like Nemo 33. Then there's one in Italy. Now we have Deep Dive Dubai, which is currently the deepest indoor diving pool. I think it's like 61 meters, I believe. The Dive Heart pool does have a plan to go down to similar like technical depths. But there's a statement on this article that says it will meet this need if the organisation meets its fundraising goals. So it's quite dependent on how their fundraiser goes. But yeah, it is nice to see another indoor diving pool. It's a different kind of diving in a indoor deep pool. You kind of are just, especially when you're going to the deeper depths, you are just diving in a tunnel basically. But if it's like Deep Dive Dubai and whatnot, they have a few things to actually look at in the shallower depths. And there's hopefully going to be one over in the States if this goes forwards. So just keep an eye on them. I'll try and keep an eye on them. Dive Heart, and hopefully they'll get their funding, and there'll be a new deep swimming pool or deep diving pool out in the US. 2 manatees that have spent nearly a lifetime in captivity are due to be freed from a controversial Florida theme park after an advocacy group posted aerial footage of one of them just swimming alone in a very filthy pool, and the US Department of Agriculture issued a scathing inspection report. So the manatees are named Romeo and Juliet, and they're 67 and 61 years old respectively, and they've lived at the Miami Seaquarium since they were captured from the wilds as calves in 1956. That's quite sad. According to the US Fish and Wildlife Service, the manatees will be relocated, quote, very soon. The move comes after Urgent Seas posted drone footage of Romeo swimming alone in a dirty pool that appeared to be isolated away from the public on the 25th of November. This came on the back of a critical report from the US Department of Agriculture in September, which accused the Seaquarium of multiple failures, citing that marine enclosures had fallen into states of disrepair and that there was inadequate handling or control of animals. So it is almost like they just kind of neglected it because no one was interested anymore. This is not the first time that the Miami Seaquarium has been at the center of a media storm. Back in October, our sister website DiverNet reported on how the facility had been accused of reneging on an undertaking to return to the ocean a male dolphin that was the former tank mate of the killer whale Lolita, which itself tragically died in August before the Seaquarium could make good on its pledge to return the animal to the wild. So it's nice that the big guns, as it were, the Department of Agriculture and US Fish and Wildlife Service have kind of taken it on themselves and like, you know what, you can't be trusted with these things anymore. We're just going to take them away from you and release them, or at least relocate them. Don't really know what or where they're specifically going, but at least anywhere is better when they are currently. UK scientists have discovered the deepest known evidence of coral reef bleaching at depths of around 90 meters at 2 atoll sites in the Indian Ocean's Chagos archipelago. Mesophotic corals are usually found between 30 and 150 meters deep. It's not just shallow water. We do get coral reefs quite deep down, and they'd previously been thought to be immune to ocean warming and because they live so far down. But divers have discovered that damage is these corals are being bleached, and the damage at depth is attributed to a 30% temperature rise caused by an irregular oscillation of sea surface temperatures. That's a fun sentence to quote. It's known as the Indian Ocean Dipole, or Indian Nino. Multidisciplinary researchers from the University of Plymouth found that this had harmed up to 80% of the reefs in parts of the seabed. Associate Professor in Physical Oceanography Philip Hosgood said there are no two ways about it. This is a huge surprise. Deeper corals had always been thought of as being resilient to ocean warming because the waters they inhabit are cooler than at the surface and were believed to remain relatively stable. However, that is clearly not the case, and as a result, there are likely to be reefs at similar depths all over the world that are at threat from similar climate changes. The first evidence of deep bleaching was picked up 4 years ago by an ROV-mounted camera on the team's research vessel, where bleaching had occurred at depth. However, no such damage had been caused to shallower reefs in the area. Subsequent data collection combined with that from satellite monitoring ocean conditions highlighted that over a period in which temperatures at the surface had barely changed, those beneath the surface had climbed from 22 degrees Celsius to 29 degrees Celsius. The lead author of the paper, Clara Diaz, said, "What we've recorded categorically demonstrates that this bleaching was caused by a deepening of the thermocline. This is down to the regional equivalent of an El Nino, and due to climate changes, these cycles of variability are becoming amplified. Moving forwards, bleaching in the deeper ocean here and elsewhere will likely become more regular." So that's just sad to hear. Granted, most divers are never going to see these corals because they're so deep down. However, it's just one of those things you don't like to hear it. The researchers returned to the same parts of the atoll in 2020 and 2022 to sort of check on how it was doing, and they found that large parts of the deep reef had recovered, which is quite nice to see. The oceanography of a region is impacted by naturally occurring cycles that are becoming amplified by climate change, said Hosgood. Currently, the region is suffering similar, if not worse, impacts due to the combined influence of El Nino and the Indian Ocean dipole. While there is no way that we can stop the thermocline from deepening, what we can do is expand our understanding of the impacts that these changes will have throughout these environments, of which we still have little knowledge, in the face of fast-paced global change that has never been more urgent. The study is published in Nature Communications if you want to check it out, and it's just one of these news stories that you keep seeing, and it's happening all around the world, and it is a real thing. But it is encouraging to see that, like when they're checking on it periodically, that there were signs of recovery. So yeah, this week the podcast is sponsored by Scubapro, and right now they have a free Octo offer running up until the end of December this year. So if you're in the market for a new set of regulators, you can really save yourself some money. You can get a free R105 Octo or a S270, which is their newer version, with the purchase of selected Scubapro regulator system online or at participating Scubapro dealers. The promotion may not be available in all regions, so double check before you go stomping into your Scubapro dealer and demand a free Octo, and it's limited to one free Octo per order. The S270 Octo, you get free whenever you get the Mark 25 D420. The Mark 19 with the D420, or the Mark 25 or Mark 19 with the S620 Ti in A clamp or DIN. Doesn't matter if you buy any of those four regulators, you get a S270 with the R105. If you get the Mark 25 or the Mark 17 with the S600, the Mark 25 or the Mark 19 with the G260, or the Mark 19 Evo Black Tech or the Mark 25 Evo Black Tech with the G260 Carbon Black Tech, both in A clamp or DIN, you get the R105 Octo. So they're all really solid regulators. The D420 looks a little bit different, but it breathes really nice. They've kind of lowered the diaphragm, and technically it is a really nice breathe in more angles. So technically it's a really nice regulator. It just looks a little bit different. The S620 Ti is a strong all-rounder. It's literally an all-rounder. It has like the best features of a few of their regulators, like the A700, the S600, and I think some of the G260. They kind of took and cherry picked certain features of each of them and like molded it into a one like combination second stage. So that's very popular, and the TI stands for titanium because it's got titanium parts on the inside, makes it a little bit lighter but also corrosion resistance. S600 and the G260 are very similar second stages. The S600 is like the pretty version, whereas the G260 is like the don't know, technical version. But on the inside, very, very similar. It is more the styling on the outside, and then you basically just pick your first stage. You've got the Mark 25, which is like their flagship, really nice. You've got the Mark 19, which is their newer diaphragm. It's like a diaphragm version of the Mark 25, which is a piston. The Mark 17 is their like classic diaphragm workhorse, and then of course the carbon black tech, it just has that PVD coating, so it's got a black look to it, but it's also a bit more scratch resistance, and usually the second stage has a carbon fiber front cover, which is pretty cool. But yeah, check out your local Scubapro dealer, pop them a visit, and double check, make sure they're signed up for this. But yeah, you can get yourself a free Octo up until the end of the year. And that was pretty much it as far as diving news, as well as new diving equipment. It's definitely getting into the quiet season. We're not really seeing anything new on dive websites. They're changing to their like Christmas gift idea things, which kind of makes sense. I've done a Christmas gift idea video that just went live on Saturday this weekend. But yeah, no, it is pretty quiet as far as new dive equipment. So I'm just going to dive straight into some Ask Mark questions over the previous week. So the first one, Catch Bay. Why choose something other than a Shearwater or a Garmin dive computer? Hashtag Ask Mark. Yeah. I mean, we do need some kind of variety out there. We can't just have like two or, God forbid, one like dive computer brand, because then that's a bit of a monopoly. So it is nice to have some kind of variety, and some divers do prefer some other brands. Shearwater or Garmin, I would be very happy diving with. Nothing but one or both of those. For the foreseeable future. Yeah, Shearwater have a great reputation. They work very hard to make some really, really stellar dive computers, and their customer services, the user interaction inside the computer, it is just that they're really, really nice dive computers. And yeah, Garmin, the giant, have just kind of stamped in. And it's really hard to compare dive computers nowadays when you have something like Garmin's hanging around with their huge battery lives, all of their additional features, all of their surface wear, all the different what you call it, like sensors on the inside. You've got the heart rate monitor and all that kind of stuff, the pedometer and the compass and all clever stuff. Wireless air integration on some of their models. So yeah, it is really hard. That, I mean, the kind of the saving grace, as it were, for some of the other brands is that the Garmin computers and to a certain extent the Shearwater are still seen as quite premium brands. They're fairly expensive when you compare them to some others. So if they did release a like budget descent or a I mean, Shearwater are kind of doing that. They released the Peregrine. They've got the Tern that's coming out, which are aimed more at recreational divers than the Terric and the Perdix. So yeah, they're kind of dabbling in that like entry level dive computer market. If Garmin did it as well, yeah, they would be definitely hard to beat. Jonathan Ventresca says, hey, just wondering which BCD you think is better, the Scubapro, Hydros Pro, or the Atomic BC2. Both seem amazing. Just wondering if you think one has the edge. Yeah, as you said, they're both great BCDs. They're very premium BCDs. Hydros Pro is a wing style BCD, but it's very different. Instead of using like a nylon Cordura material like most other BCDs, it uses the same monoprene as as some of their fins. So that's quite clever in that one, it dries almost instantly. As soon as you get out of the water, most of your BCD is completely dry. The wing is still a traditional material, or at least parts of it are a traditional material, but the harness, the back plate, has this monoprene covering to it, which is pretty clever. Does make it a little bit heavy. So if you're really trying to go as lightweight as possible, then it kind of rules out the Hydros Pro because it's a bit of a heavyweight. It's not ridiculously heavy, but there are a lot lighter BCDs out there. The monoprene is also quite grippy, which is quite nice. So when it's on, it kind of clings to you. So the BCD and your cylinder and everything kind of move with you. Whereas with like some material, you can get a little bit of that kind of shuffle where the cylinder takes a moment to catch up. So you don't get that on the Hydros Pro. It's also quite modular, which is nice. If parts of it break or you want to add or remove a certain pocket or pouch, it's quite modular, which is nice. The BC2 Atomic Aquatics are like the premium like diving brand, so everything is as like fancy as it can be. Again, similar to the Hydros Pro, but in a different way. Instead of using traditional like Cordura material, where like salt crystals, or at least salt, can absorb into the material, and then as it dries, it forms crystals, or like contaminants. If you're diving in like nasty water, they can get into that Cordura like material. But the BC2 uses a laminated material similar to like PSD, public service diving BCDs. So it's like hydrophobic. So again, similar to the Hydros Pro, but in a different way. Nothing can soak into it. Even the bladder, the entire wing is completely laminated in this material, so it's very hard for any contaminants or salt to penetrate into the BC2. And just the little things, the D rings have like a titanium coating, which is pretty snazzy. The cam band on the back, it's taken inspiration from snowboard bindings, and it's very quick and easy. There's like a ratchet strap to quickly adjust it, and then you clamp it down instead of having to thread your cam band through and then readjust it to get it to like just the right tightness. It's just kind of zip, clamp, and that's it. Very quick and easy. One thing about BC2 is that you don't get an inflator as standard. On like every other BCD that I know, you just get a standard inflator that comes with it. Sometimes you get a choice. You can upgrade to like an integrated inflator, so it has a little second stage built into it, so you can use it as an octo. But with the BC2, you have a choice of three. And they literally screw on and unscrew, so it's very quick and easy to remove your inflator, which is quite a nice feature, especially to wash out and dry out your BCD between dives. But you do get a standard inflator, and when I say standard, it's not standard like any other inflator. It's built to like the quality of a second stage, so very nice. But it has like stainless steel parts in it. There's an upgrade to that which uses titanium parts, but it's still a standard style 2-button inflator. Or you have it's called the SS1, so you can have that second stage built into your inflator. I mean, which is better? It depends on the diver and what you're diving. But as far as like specifications and features and things, the BC2 is technically better. but it's very much like personal preference. Again, it's not particularly light. It's personal choice, but the BC2 is probably better technically. Which one I would choose? Personally, I'd probably go for the Scubapro, just because I don't know. I always feel diving with those kind of premium products, you don't want to get it dirty, and I'd be like forever worried about it. Whereas the Scubapro, granted, it's not a cheap BCD, but I'd be a bit more rough and tumble with it. William McDermott asks, my dive master insists that my hose must be removed from my BCD inflator hose after each dive. I like to have it on and just hang everything up together. Why not? So leaving your BCD low pressure inflator hose attached onto your inflator. I mean, my first thoughts go to you're leaving your Schrader valve open on that hose. But it should be protected by the inflate valve on your inflator. I mean, that's the only place where my mind goes. But also, like fall damage, if your BCD falls off of the hanger or whatever you're hanging up with, then your regulators are coming as well, which are more likely to break. But yeah, my first thoughts are like water ingress, because if you're washing it together unpressurized, if you leave it connected and you press the inflate button, then water could find its way into the hose and then into the first stage, which is bad. But I mean, that's a similar reason why you never press the purge button on your second stage when you're washing your dive equipment after a dive depressurized, because then water can get into the hose. But that's the only thing that I can think of. Is that it's holding that Schrader valve open in the hose. Otherwise, I can't think of too many other reasons why it's a bad thing. But yeah, it is just nice to break down your equipment and organize it, but that's where my mind goes. Rancid's channel says, this is going to be another question. I was wondering about earplugs, as I thought they would block the ear, thus how on earth would you equalize if you wore plugs? Yep. But I see they are vented, so that kind of answers that question. What are other ways of equalizing without pinching your nose? Yeah, there are plenty of ways of equalizing without. Well, I mean, I say plenty. There's a few maneuvers. I mean, the most common equalizing technique that most people are taught is like pinch your nose and blow. That's called the Valsalva technique or maneuver. They're usually called like techniques or maneuvers. I think based on whoever like discovered them. And yeah, pinch your nose and blow is fairly effective. It's really easy to teach, which I think is why it tends to be the most common. But actually, it does have some downsides. I think there's plenty of ways that you can like force things like mucus and stuff into your eustachian tube, which is obviously a bad thing. So there are other methods, and if you dive like full face masks, there are ways to block your nose in full face masks, but I rarely get on with them that well, so I do tend to use techniques that don't involve pinching your nose, because of course you can't reach your nose; it's underneath a mask. There's VTO, which full name is Voluntary Tubal Opening. I describe it as a yawn, where I'm going to yawn a lot through this, so I apologize if I make you yawn. You kind of push your bottom jaw forwards a bit as if you're going to yawn, and you tense like your jaw and your soft palate. That kind of stretches that area, and yeah, that helps to equalize. And if you do it right, you can kind of do it all the way down. Sometimes I need to pause just to give it a chance to equalize, or kind of do a bit of a wiggly jaw. But yeah, that's how I typically equalize. Yeah, you've got Valsalva, VTO, Toynbee, which is pinch your nose and swallow. but of course that involves pinching your nose. Frenzel, again, pinch your nose, but you kind of make a K sound, which like lifts the back of your tongue up to the roof of your mouth, and that helps to equalize your ears. There's Lowry, which is a combination of Valsalva and Toynbee. So you're pinching your nose, you're blowing, but you're also swallowing, and it's all just to move all of the tissues and stuff in like the back of your throat to open up that eustachian tube. Edmund's maneuver, which is Valsalva and VTO. So you're yawning, but you're also pinching your nose. But yeah, I don't know what wiggling your jaw from side to side. I presume there's a proper name for it. But yeah, I tend to do the yawn, but also like wiggle my jaw from side to side. Touch wood, that always works for me. It just takes a little bit of practice, and if I'm diving a half mask, a standard like scuba mask, then yeah, you can just pinch your nose and do it all together. But yeah, voluntary tubal opening is probably your best bet. The next one, cool, truth, that's not a name. ASDFQEWR. Yeah, that's. I apologize if that is your name, but it doesn't look like it could be. Anyway, they say, would an inflator with a forced exhaust button, such as the SAS AACS or the Tusa APA, be worth the cost? Of course, the Aqualung i3 or Mahrez Air Trim looks nice, but it seems to me that exhaust from the dump valve on the right shoulder or the valve that pulls the inflator hose would be sufficient. I would like to know the appeal, as the overhaul price would be about twice as much. I think I would opt for a regular power inflator in the current situation. Yeah, these are pretty rare, and I'll be honest, I don't have a full like knowledge of them because I haven't looked into them that much. It's never been a problem that needs solving, trying to dump gas faster in my eyes. And they were like pneumatically designed inflators so that you could push a certain button to dump gas faster from your BCD. And I could never really see the benefit of it. One, it was never that much of an issue for me personally to be able to dump gas any faster than traditional dump valves. I mean, there were what, 2 instances where you need to dump gas like in a hurry. I mean, arguably at the surface when you start the dive. I mean, you don't really need to dump gas fast when you're starting the dive. You do want a controlled descent, and if you're having a runaway ascent, that's going to be the main one to dump gas faster than it's expanding or being inflated. So no, it's never really been that much of an issue for me, which is probably why they're not more prevalent. These like turbo dump valves, as it were. So no, I don't think it's worth it. And the main thing is that you don't see them on most other like brands or BCDs, so no, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Crazy Gecko says, hi Mark, thanks for all your advice, I really appreciate the series, you are welcome. I have a question regarding the Mahrez first stages. Mahrez offers these upgrade kits, the twin balanced piston for certain regulators. Yes, they claim to improve the cold water performance and overall performance. What are your thoughts on these? I'm using a 52X first stage and wondering if the upgrade kit would be worth the money. Yeah, Mahrez offer the TBP twin balance piston upgrades. Sometimes they, depending on the regulator configuration, they have them fitted as standard. Other times it's an upgrade kit that you can get for most of their, I think it's just their diaphragm first stages, and it's like an extra cap that goes that screws onto the top or one end of your first stage, and it adds a piston as well as an environmental seal. So One of the things with Mahrez regulators, especially the diaphragm regulators, is that they're often open to the elements, which isn't a huge issue with the diaphragm regulator because the diaphragm itself prevents a lot of the like nasties and contaminants and the water from getting into certain chambers of the first stage. However, in very cold water environments, if that freezes over because the first stage has a lot of gas running through it, so it tends to get quite cold, there is a chance that it can freeze up. And if it does that, it interrupts the balancing of it because the water pressure around it can't push on that diaphragm. So you basically turn your first stage into an unbalanced regulator. Whereas I mean, the easiest way to do it is just to have an environmental seal on the outside. But if you fill it with air, then you don't get the benefit or as much of the benefit because air is compressible as the of the balancing around you. So what Mahrez have done, there are alternates away. I've got a regulator and a environmental like seal kit that goes around it for colder water diving. And what you would do is you would fill it with like either a gel or something that doesn't freeze, or the cheaper version is alcohol. You just fill it with alcohol that doesn't freeze, so that way you still get the pressure, the ambient pressure to balance the first stage, but to install it and to uninstall it to service it can get quite messy. So it's a bit of a pain. So what Mahrez have done is they've created this extra chamber that a technician can fit to the top of your or replace a certain section in your first stage. It has a piston built into it, and then an external environmental seal to prevent water and nasties from getting in, and to transfer the ambient pressure. There's this little piston that just pushes on or pushes against the spring on the diaphragm. So yeah, it's a clever solution to that problem. If you're diving in temperatures like below 10 degrees Celsius frequently, yeah, it is a nice upgrade. It's not ridiculously expensive, but it would be a good like fail safe to help prevent your first stage from freezing up, especially if you're diving on single cylinders. I'd use one. On twins it's less of an issue, because if you're in like an out of air situation, two divers breathing off of a single first stage, you're increasing the airflow running through that first stage, so you increase the chances of it freezing up. Whereas on twin sets, you're using two separate first stages, so you halve the load in an out of air situation. So less of an issue on twin sets, but on single cylinders, yeah, it would definitely be an upgrade that I would be considering. Otherwise, that's it for the podcast. It's been a pretty quiet week. It's gone pretty fast as well. I can't believe we're well, as I'm recording it, it's Thursday. We're at Thursday already. We're catching up to Christmas pretty quick. Remember to check out today's sponsor, Scubapro.com. They've got the awesome free Octo offer in quite a few regions now. So if you're in the market for a new set of regulators, you can catch yourself a bargain. So head over to Scubapro.com. You can also check out our website, scubadivermag.com, and check out all our latest news articles. Like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this. And thank you for listening, everyone. And of course, safe diving.